Hand up, I did not think the Tampa Bay Rays were going to dominate the deadline. I had no idea. But you know what? Just baseball show. We have a lot to catch up on. As always, it's presented by BetMGM. Monday, July 29th. We are at this very moment, as you're listening to this, I'm just going to guess it's like, all right, 8 a.m. on Monday when you're listening to this. Let's call it, is that 36 hours out, 34 hours out of the MLB trade deadline. And this has been an awesome start. We're going to go through Jazz Chisholm, Carlos Estevez, Austin Hayes, Danny Jansen, Nate Pearson, Yimi Garcia, Randy Arozarena, Jason Adams, Zach Eflin, Isaac Paredes, and then whatever we got to talk about in terms of the NL Central, because we promised every division deadline preview. But this has been a ridiculous start to the deadline in the best way.
Oh, it's been amazing. So wait, we're not doing weekend roundup on top of that as well?
Hey, congrats to Xavier Edwards on cycling. I saw that note that you put out. Did you have the same thought I did? Because I sent that mass text. Did I kind of lead you to that?
Yes, you did. You did. I was going to tell you on the show when we brought it up. You led me to that stat because you made the comment like something along the lines of just like, wow, like Xavier Isaac hits for Xavier Isaac. The shows where my mind is. Yeah, right. Xavier Edwards hits for the cycle and his team only scores 2 runs. And I thought about that and I'm like, well, the home run would automatically be 1. Right. So how often is a guy hitting a triple, a double, and a single as well, in addition to that home run and his team's only scoring 2 runs? The answer was one other time in Major League Baseball history. I think it was 1968, if I remember. I didn't put it in the tweet, but I think it was like John King or something in like 1968. Twice in Major League history, at least after 1900, you've had a cycle with 2 or less runs scored for your team. The Marlins lost that game, but really awesome to see Xavier Edwards get run and be able to show that he's got some talent there. The guy can swing it. He's been amazing before that cycle too. Yeah. So it's been really fun to watch him play.
Not bad for the guy that Blake Snell called a slapdick prospect on a stream. So pretty good for Xavier Edwards, I'd say. Yeah, the only reason that piqued my interest, as crazy as this sounds, that was on July 28th. July 28th, like early 1960s or something. Jim Fregosi cycled for the LA Angels in a 3-1 win. And I read that on Sunday morning and I was like, that's weird that it was a 3-1 game and you had a cycle. And then Xavier Edwards legs out a routine ground ball to Willy Adames at short, who's a good defender, and cycles on that same date when his team only puts up 2 runs. Now, we can make fun of the Marlins offense all we want. Having said that, I saw the note from Codify that over the last 80 games, the Miami Marlins have scored 1 more run than the Atlanta Braves have.
Yeah.
So that shows you where the Braves are right now.
Yes. And also Bryce Terang was a vacuum in that game. I had it on MLB big inning and it was kind of flashing around. And every time I looked down, Terang was making another diving play. I mean, he's a wizard. He's a great shortstop. So you can imagine how good he is at second base. So that was fun to watch. And then Devin Williams making his return. It wasn't as smooth as you maybe wanted, but it's his first outing back after being on the 60-day IL. That's got to be a huge boost for the Brewers now as well. Everyone, I hope they don't do the corny thing and say that was our deadline acquisition as an excuse to not add more, but that's definitely a great acquisition around the deadline. Even more reason for one of baseball's best farm systems to go make a bigger splash.
They added Nick Mears as well, who is not on the rundown. There is a guy that is super, he kind of leads the anti-bubble conversation, and it's obviously Isaac Paredes that we'll talk about when we get there, but Nick Mears, that guy, his Savant page is very, very red. He's got a 5.7 in Colorado, and Milwaukee just traded for him. I know it's Colorado, but a 5.7, and I watched this guy walk the world with the Pirates and with their AAA affiliate over several years. So, I can appreciate the Savant bubbles. I have to see him do this for a first place team. It's things like that where it's I think the trade deadline is the perfect time to put the Savant bubbles to the test. And I'm so excited to go on a little rant with you. I think we're going to be hand in hand for the Isaac Paredes thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I know we're already seeing that discussion there too, but I will say, I think there's a lot of value to be had in acquiring some of these Rockies relievers whose numbers aren't great, but you look at some of the underlying stuff and it's pretty strong. I wouldn't be surprised if Mears is a very solid arm for them. Also, considering one of his best pitch is a slider, and I'm excited to see how that pitch continues to play elsewhere. But I mean, that is a nice addition. But let's see them add to the rotation, please. We'll get there, but like, please.
Fact or fiction? This is the last thing on the weekend roundup. Fact or fiction? You knew who Tyler Phillips was a week ago.
Only reason I did is Peter and I were talking about him as who is that guy before. So we already broached the who is that guy conversation when he came in and gave them a quality start. I think maybe even last weekend roundup. I don't know what exactly it was, what episode that was, but we did talk about him. Like, I knew nothing about that guy. So no, I did not know who he was. Only other thing I want to say is this is the first Sunday. I'm not going to complain about Yankees Red Sox Sunday Night Baseball. It's going on right now as we're recording.
Yeah,
but
Friday,
the game
Saturday
yesterday,
awesome. Yeah,
the game on Saturday was a banger. I'll give them that. They just got Jazz Chisholm in New York, which we're going to talk about. So I will refrain from complaining about Sunday Night Baseball again being Yankees Red Sox. I'm okay with it this time. Also we got to see that big shiny new DH/backup catcher edition, Danny Jansen, who gets the start on Sunday Night Baseball as well.
You're hating on that move. I'm gonna present the counterpoint here. I thought that was a good move at the
I
moment.
don't even think it's a bad move. I just think it's so weird, which we'll get into.
L ratio, but Tyler Phillips, a complete game shutout for the Philadelphia Phillies. 25 innings for the former 16th round pick at a high school in New Jersey by the Texas Rangers. He was a waiver claim by the Phillies in 2021. He was sporting an ERA close to 5 in AAA this year, and he gets up 25 innings, 5 earned, 19 Ks, 2 walks. He's balling right now. And I don't, was he the corresponding move for Ranger hitting the IL? I don't think he was. I think he was already up there.
I'm not sure, but what's awesome is I think you're seeing and we'll see if it sustains, but I think just even in these couple starts here, you're seeing the difference that an experienced catcher can make for you. If you're a player or a pitcher with a very diverse arsenal. Tyler Phillips is a kitchen sink guy. He's sinker, slider, curveball, splitter, cutter, four seam, changeup. Like, he's giving you all of those. And the changeup and the four seam are very rare. But I think if you have a catcher like JT Realmuto who can really help you sequence and pattern and attack hitters in a certain way with that diverse arsenal, you see the results there. And I'm not saying he's going to continue to do it, but I mean, even those 2 starts that they've been able to get out of him have been huge as they're trying to kind of bolster the rotation back up and have it clicking on all cylinders. So as he's filled in there, I think that's why you hear so much about pitch calling. I think a big part of that was JT.
I love that. I am going to say, before we get into this trade frenzy, we're going to run out of time if we were to talk about all the prospect returns. Luckily, there's another podcast that we talk about. So this is me again funneling you guys over to the call up if you want to hear about the prospects in depth return for all these guys. But we're going to stick to the big leaguers and the fit here. And we'll tell you hey, the package was good. Hey, the package was if that was.
I'm glad you said that because we'll give you the what you need to know, the 411 on these prospects, but if you want the in-depth breakdown, how they're going to translate, how that player projects, the underlying data, all that's going to be on the call up. And on the call up, we're not going to go as deep into the big league side and what the big league fits look like. So I figure that's the fun balance of this thing. Of course, we will talk about the packages because some I think were strong and comparison to our expectations. Others maybe were a bit less than our expectations. So we'll add that context, of course. But yeah, if you feel like you want more, don't worry. This coming week, we're going to break down all those trades in detail. And we already have broken down several of those deals on the call up. That episode's already out. So check that out. Already a handful of trades that we broke down prospects by prospects. Pretty much every single prospect that will get traded or has been traded already will be discussed in pretty good detail on the call up.
Through Jared Serna, I think. We didn't get Abraham Ramirez, but we got Augustine Ramirez and Jared Serna as that unfolded. But we're going to start with Jazz Chisholm here. And by strong returns, I feel like you were referring to the Carlos Estevez deal, which we're going to get to after the Jazz Chisholm thing. Holy shit, man. But Jazz Chisholm is, he just made his Yankee debut last night at Fenway on Sunday Night Baseball. Jazz Chisholm is the newest New York Yankee with 2.5 years of control. Augustine Ramirez, the catching prospect, Jared Serna, and Abraham Ramirez, are the three prospects going back to Miami. Apparently, Miami had a bunch of other competitive offers
Mhm.
here, and they chose the one that they thought was best. We'll really get into Jazz's fit with the Yankees, and I know that Aaron Boone said that he's going to be playing third base, which, like, okay, let's try this thing, man. Um, did you, knowing the teams that were involved there, did you feel like the Yankees probably presented the best package? Obviously, we don't know the package from the other
Yeah.
teams, but based on the teams and what the Marlins were likely asking for, I saw the report that the Pirates finished second. You have to assume that Henry Davis was part of that package. I would think that they looked at Henry Davis and Augustine Ramirez and said, "Hey, we can be more hands-on and develop an Augustine Ramirez a little bit more, and we like the secondary piece in Serna, and we like the secondary piece in Abraham Ramirez."
I think Augustine Ramirez is literally a better version of Henry Davis at this point. And that's not to knock Henry Davis. It's more of a testament to Ramirez, who, has the plus power, has been getting into it plenty now in the upper minors, and isn't the best defender in the world at catcher, but has a plus arm, and it has improved enough to be passable there. I think it really was that side of it. Like, I think Ramirez was the best player that the Marlins were offered. He's a little bit of extra, but he's an extra for the Yankees at this point, especially with the emergence of Ben Rice, especially with Austin Wells, and how confident they clearly are in him. They really didn't need Ramirez, and that was somebody that I think for the Marlins, that's a position they desperately needed, and that's a guy that probably projects to be their opening day catcher, at least very early into the season next year, as their guy. So you got to feel good about that. I think without a doubt, that was the best player that the Marlins were offered. And you can't look at the pipeline ranking on that. It's not updated yet. You can look at Baseball Prospectus, who has him as the 33rd ranked prospect in baseball, which I also think is too high that way. But also it's
in between. Yeah.
yeah, and I can't say too high. That's their opinion, and they're very good at what they do. So I should say higher than I would go, but I would go somewhere in between there, which is probably back end or fringe top 100 prospect with plenty more upside than that. And that's a good player. And then I think when you look at what the Yankees are getting here, it's the jolt that they need on multiple fronts. One, they have a lot of uncertainty in the outfield, I feel like, because you want Dominguez to be back, but you're not going to not make a move because Dominguez is presumably going to come back from an oblique, which we know can take forever to kind of get right. You also don't want to go pay a ton, though, for a player with control, knowing that you are going to have Dominguez back at some point, and he is going to be back next year and beyond that. So Jazz felt like the perfect fit, because if, God forbid, something happens with the outfield and, you do need to plug him out there, you can do that. But when Gleyber's gone, Jazz slides right into second base and you are good to go. Not to mention they need speed. They need guys that can create runs on the base paths. And I think he's going to thrive in that environment.
And he'll be the first to tell you that he's not an outfielder. Like he
Yeah.
wants to play infield, and I think that that's a huge help for them. And you're right, like he is the heir to Gleyber Torres at second base when Gleyber inevitably leaves in free agency. But the third base thing to me is very interesting. That has been such a sore spot. And I saw the report that the Yankees and the Dodgers were in a bidding war for Isaac Paredes before the Cubs swept in at the very last moment. They DFA'd JD Davis. They needed a beating heart and a decent bat at third base. And they got more than that for 2.5 years. And like, he'll bounce around and he'll be the second baseman next year. But for this World Series bid that they're trying to put together this year, if Jazz can merely survive defensively at third base, it's a massive upgrade over whatever they got from that position over the last, like, frankly, 2-3 years. There were a couple really bad years of Donaldson after that trade. Like, it's been not good over there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's why I think they're going to try it, right? Like, I think one of the biggest limitations for him was surprisingly the range at short. There's guys that are just really fast, but not as quick with the footwork. And I doubt that's something that Jazz focused on much throughout his amateur career, the footwork at shortstop. But at third base, the actions are fine. Like he's been able to show that he can play decent infield. And that's why he grades out actually quite well at second base. But I want to also mention one more thing on this, and this is probably more layered conversation. Most of the others it'll be very transactional, but obviously one of baseball's biggest personalities, who's kind of underachieved relative to the hype and discussion around him, going to one of baseball's biggest market. That warrants a conversation, especially when they're struggling, and he can provide a lot of things that they don't have. But something that kind of frustrated me was the way, like, you can see in real time, and I don't mean to like put the tinfoil cap and conspiracy theorize here. You can see in real time some of the media working overtime for the Yankees. I just think it's so funny that the Yankees, right? The story was, oh, the Yankees are not comfortable with, or are a little bit concerned. I'm sure you can find the exact words, but the Yankees are a little bit concerned with Jazz Chisholm's personality and his brashness. Look, I understand that he can be brash, and I'm not denying that. But let's be honest here. This is a team that traded for Josh Donaldson, that had Aroldis Chapman on their ball club for a while, that employed Domingo Germán for longer than they should have, that traded for Alex Verdugo, who is not somebody that's going to make things easier. Again, I don't have anything against him, but like, come on, let's be real here.
And real quick, let me do us a favor. Let's put Chapman and Germán in a different bucket, because those guys like actually are bad people.
Correct.
And then you have Verdugo and Marcus Stroman and Verdugo, who are lightning rods, and Jazz falls into the lightning rod aspect of that.
Yes. My point being, though, like, if you're willing to take it that far,
yeah,
like if you're willing to employ people who are actually like facing serious allegations, and then beyond that, we're talking about personalities. Donaldson is anything but a calming personality in the clubhouse, I feel like. Verdugo is definitely been a guy that can ruffle some feathers.
Stroman, man, you can't forget about Stroman.
Yeah, Stroman's not the smoothest sailor either. So, I think it's just wild to me that was the story that comes out, especially with them trading for him anyways. Yeah. That just seemed like a ploy to negate some trade value there, and I thought that was silly. But back on the baseball side, the Yankees are second to last in Major League Baseball in stolen bases. They have 43 as a team. Jazz Chisholm has more than half that himself, right? Like, that's a huge component to this as well. He is going to give them another dynamic that they just don't have and haven't had. And I think that's huge. Not to mention the left-handed bat with the short porch and right and all of that good stuff. And I also think this is a guy that, he's better when the lights are on, and, they've been playing a lot of meaningless games this year in Miami. I think he's going to rise to the occasion in New York, and I'm excited to see what it looks like. I think it's good for baseball.
I think it's going to be great for baseball. And I pose the question, like, how many nationally televised games has he played? I know he's played a couple of wild card games, but like outside of that,
a couple,
maybe.
Yeah, like the Fox Sports 1 games, if you count those, like
sure,
maybe one or two Sunday Night Baseball games, if I can remember.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, few and far between. This is going to be the biggest spotlight that he's ever had in his career, and big personalities, chances are they level up in a big spotlight, and that can be huge for them. We'll jump over to Carlos Estevez, the Angels closer, going over to Philly for a return that made my jaw drop. Samuel Aldegari, the left-hander, who has been so strong this year, and George Klassen, the college right-hander, low A and high A this year, right-hander up to 101, with the craziest slider that like there might be in minor league baseball. You got a live look at Klassen.
Yeah.
How stunned were you at this package?
I was pretty surprised. I figured Klassen could go, but I thought if Klassen's going, maybe it's a 1-for-1. Yeah. Like Aldegari going also. I think it's more of a reminder that maybe Aldegari is teams may feel, and the Phillies may feel, that he's kind of out pitching his stuff because a little bit more polished than his competition. But Klassen, I mean, that live look was really amazing. And I recently tweeted or re-highlighted the video that I was able to get from behind home plate there. His curveball slider combination is easily the best. I think one of the most impressive breaking balls in minor league baseball. And just there's numbers to back that up. And also seeing it in person, the slider is so sharp, and it's at 90 with just crazy bite to it. Looks like the fastball out of the hand and just jumps. And then the curveball is kind of slurvy, but enough vertical, break that it's different. And that really dives. An 86 to 87 mile an hour curveball when you got to worry about a 90 mile an hour slider, and he's sitting 97 with his fastball. That's nuts. There's a lot of there's a fair amount of effort in the delivery, and I think that's what may point towards relief. But curveball and slider, opponents are hitting below 100 against this year, and that he's throwing those pitches combined, 24% on the curveball, 23% on the slider. So that's the vast majority of his pitches. His opponents are hitting below 100 against. So that was shocking to see him and a solid pitching prospect in Aldegari included, the two breakout guys in the system. But I think for Dombrowski, he felt like he was probably cashing in, and selling high and getting, who some people might see Estevez as the best closer or the best reliever on the market, though Tanner Scott's been more impressive, a little bit more track record with Estevez. And obviously he's been quite good this year.
And, in essence, like Estevez takes the role of Sir Anthony Dominguez, and that objectively is an upgrade this year. And I know that Sir Anthony is like as good a clubhouse guy as we have in Major League Baseball, and like seeing the Phillies media kind of talk about it, Sir Anthony, when he was leaving, it was like, I hope they go to the World Series again. Like, he just seems like an awesome dude. Sir Anthony Dominguez joins the Orioles now, and we're going to get to that deal in a moment. But from the Philly bullpen perspective, Estevez, like, is he a co-closer? Is he going to be the eighth inning guy? Is he going to be the seventh inning guy? Right now, you have all-star Jeff Hoffman, all-star Matt Strom, deserving all-star Orion Kirkring, Jose Alvarado, Gregory Soto, and Carlos Estevez. 6 guys that you can turn to there that I'm very comfortable running out there in the 8th inning. That's the bullpen that is World Series caliber. That bullpen can win a World Series.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the distribution of righties and lefties too. With the way Strom has been, you hope Alvarado can get hot down the stretch. And that's another guy that, when he's hot, he could be unhittable. They have 5 guys, as you mentioned, you could say 6, but I would say comfortably 3 to 4 that could be closers on a lot of, playoff to fringe playoff teams. And that's the approach, especially in the postseason. Like, you don't need the one closer. I don't think that really computes much anymore. Like, there's matchup dependent situations. If you're going to face a trio of lefties and your closer happens to be a lefty, and you're facing a trio of lefties in the 8th, you're going to go to that lefty in the 8th, especially when you have 2 to 3 righties that you can go to in the 9th that could also be closers. So compiling high leverage arms, to me, there's just high leverage and not high leverage. And this Phillies bullpen is almost completely high leverage. Of course, it's great to have guys that are comfortable in the 9th. Sure. But to me, most guys nowadays, most of these arms, they're all comfortable in the 9th. They all have insane stuff. You're either comfortable in high leverage or you're not. And all of these guys have experience throwing in high leverage, and all, I think are quite impressive. So this bullpen it stacks up there with anybody. And Estevez I think really puts it over the top.
And they got a hell of a corner outfielder too from Baltimore. And this was a contender for contender, big leaguer for big leaguer deal that sent Austin Hayes from Baltimore to Philly for Sir Anthony Dominguez and Christian Pache. Baltimore gets a very talented defensive 4th outfielder, very talented. They also get a guy that factors into their bullpen situation in Sir Anthony Dominguez. But the Phillies needed to level up in the outfield badly. And I remember a couple weeks ago, before Brenton Doyle started having an out-of-body experience, I was like, can they make the move for Brenton Doyle? The easier one, and the one that hurts less and doesn't cost an arm and a leg, is moving Marsh back to center and grabbing a guy to fill in a corner. And that's exactly what Austin Hayes can do. And that outfield trio of Marsh in center, Hayes in left, Castellanos, who is anchored in right, is a hell of a lot more exciting than Marsh in left, Johan Rojas and Pache in center, and Castellanos in right.
Well, and Marsh, just with the splits as well, it could be a guy that you end up sheltering a little bit, maybe left on left, and you can go with Rojas in those games if you want. So it gives them that kind of flexibility there, because Austin Hayes demolishes left-handed pitching. And even in a year that's been kind of down for him, a 760 OPS against left-handed pitching this year, he's slashing 320, 400, 485. So now you have that side of things. I think that really helps, because they may just not even hit Marsh against lefties. And that could be a way to really maximize. I mean, Marsh has been borderline. No, not even borderline. He's been unusable against lefties this year. By the way, slashing 140, 211, 160 against lefties.
So not borderline.
I think that's past the border. So that is an aspect too now where this is the classic platoon into basically an all-star here. Two above average regulars, you platoon them, you get a borderline or basically an all-star. Against righties, Brendan Marsh has an 850 OPS. Against lefties, Austin Hayes has an 850 plus OPS, actually 880. Both of those guys are great defenders in a corner too. And then if you want, you can have all three of them, in a lot of spots as well, in the outfield where now the defense is going to be great too. So gives them a lot more flexibility, and I think it's a great addition. It's crazy though that the Orioles still, well, even when they add, they're like not trading from the unparalleled farm system. That part just continues to blow my mind. They're never going to deviate, dude. They're never going to deviate.
Never. And the report that they'd rather move Mountcastle and Mullins than any of the prospects is hilarious to me. They moved guys that were non-factors, respectfully to Jackson Bowmeister and Mac Horvath. Like, we'll get to that deal in a moment, but they moved guys that were not sniffing that big league roster ever. Like, they were going to get moved eventually. It's crazy what they do, but like, this felt like a mutually beneficial deal for them. And
I loved it though.
I loved it. I love contender matchups.
I do miss like these early 2000s type of trades. It's just, it's fun. It's refreshing. I hope we get more of them. It's just annoying in this instance because it's like the one team that really doesn't need to do it, does it. Right. But it does kind of keep the Phillies in a spot here where they could go make another splash, right? Because yes, they did part with two good prospects to get Estevez and two guys that are rising up quickly. But also remember these, especially Klassen, it's a college arm with a lot of reliever risk, high effort delivery. You're cashing in here. He's only pitched at the high A level. I think you could look at their farm system still. It's as strong as it's ever been. They still have 5-6 borderline top 100 guys. I always talk about it like they might not be on the list, but are they top 200 caliber prospects? Basically, they got a handful of those, and it's all about in the eye of the beholder. Somebody else may think that two of those guys are top 100 prospects. I think they're within the gap of reasonably saying they're top 100 guys. Yeah. They could turn that into a stud if they wanted to, and they didn't touch the farm here to upgrade in a corner outfield spot. That's really impressive for the Phillies.
Who were the untouchables in the Philly system?
I'd say Aiden Miller, Andrew Painter. Anyone else can go.
You think Miller's untouchable?
Just about. Okay. It would take something. It would take Luis Robert for me. Like he's too good. You look at their roster situation and his timeline, like that is actually a clear, okay, that guy can actually come up and help us at some point. The power potential, sticking on the left side of the infield, even if it's not shortstop. They don't have to. Maybe if they had other guys or didn't have other guys that they could move, sure. But like Justin Crawford, I'm moving so much quicker than I'm moving in Aiden Miller. Starwin Caba, who's awesome but so far off, and a shortstop. I think Miller ends up sliding to third or could play second or could play even first if they wanted to. The bat's just so much more exciting.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're willing to part with Caba, who is a top 100 prospect. And we talked about this guy as like possibly being a top 100 guy, Eduardo Tait. Like, move him too.
I'd be a little bit more reluctant with Tait because he's probably their only contingency plan within the next few years of Realmuto, but I would move him before Aiden Miller as well. Gotcha. Again, I think Miller could be up there in a year and a half, and he already looks really impressive.
Last thing before we get to your favorite trade of the deadline, choose your fighter when it comes to aggregate all-stars. Marsh and Hayes or Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk?
Ooh.
It's tough.
I'd go with Peterson and Grichuk this year.
Can I add a third, actually? I think this one's the clear winner. Mountcastle and O'Hearn.
Mountcastle. Yeah, that's probably got to be the winner. I don't have them all in front of me, but that would actually be a great off-season thing, too, to dive into.
Yeah, choose your aggregate all-stars.
Yeah, who are the best, like, platoon duos in baseball? But I think, yeah, it's got to be the O's guys. But with the way Jock's swinging it, he kind of carries that platoon. In Arizona.
Yeah, I like that. Like, we're 2 days into Paris. I think we just put together a gold, silver, and bronze there, so we're good to go. Okay, jumping to Aram's favorite trade of the deadline. Danny Jansen goes from Toronto to Boston. The return for Danny Jansen was Edison Paulino, Cutter Coffee, and Gilberto Batista. Why'd you hate it?
I didn't hate it. I just think it's so random. It's just funny to me that the team that cashed in quite nicely on trading a rental catcher
Yeah.
is now doing that on the other side. I remember they traded Christian Vasquez, and I got the Muller Abreu,
Mm.
and I know that was not Breslow, but I know that was Heim. But at the same time, it's just funny to me. Like Cutter Coffee's decent prospect. Yeah, he has some intrigue. Edinson Paulino is not a nobody. I don't think they're going to lose sleep over this trade. I just think it's funny to get a rental backup catcher slash DH to for 3 months. I get it. McGuire was a disaster. I understand that. I
Disaster.
just like you're giving away a couple prospects for a rental backup catcher slash DH. And I know they think he's a great fix. He pulls the ball in the air consistently, and you can imagine how that's going to play
For the monster
in
he's done.
Fenway. But this guy's also hitting like a buck 50 since the beginning of May.
Yeah.
So the role that he's serving, giving up actual prospects when if you're going to make a move, I'd rather just pay a little bit more and actually make a more substantial move.
Yeah.
That's the part that just didn't totally compute for me.
Yeah, they're riding the high of Connor Wong. I wonder if they have any doubts about Wong being the everyday guy for the remaining 2 months. Like, there's a chance Wong just runs into a wall. I don't think that's going to happen entirely, but like, this guy's OPSing into the 800s. Who knows if that's going to continue? Because this guy did not show that before this year, like, really at all.
Yeah.
So I can see it from that perspective. I also, going into the year, I viewed Danny Jansen as the best backup catcher in all of baseball. And, I thought he would be a starter on 10 to 15 major league teams. And I know he's been dealing with injury a little bit this year. I think he missed a month, like at the beginning of the year. In the front 2 months, he missed about a month of that. But Danny Jansen is a guy that I think makes me sleep a little bit better seeing the piecemeal that they have 6 through 9 in the batting order every single night. And some of those guys are performing really well, like Wong, really well. Rob Refsnyder, really well. David Hamilton, really well. No, he's been in the leadoff spot a couple times. But man, like Danny Jansen is a much safer name than any of those guys.
For sure. And you could say like, oh, well, why wouldn't they just go like try to pick up like a Ty France or whatever it may be? But it makes sense in the fact that there's not a lot of catchers that would have been available on the market who could presumably also be an upgrade as a DH spot or just another right-handed bat in your lineup. I just, the part that kind of I was hung up on is you're giving up multiple like all right prospects for that rental at a position that you do have a starter at who's been very good all year. And Danny Jansen over his last 35 games has a 430 OPS. So that's just the surprising side of it to me. But again, it's not like they gave up anything substantial, and it's not the end of the world. It just was a weird one to me.
Yeah. Another Blue Jay trade. Nate Pearson, the reliever.
Yeah, talk about weird.
Talk about weird. This one made no sense to me. Your thoughts. Nate Pearson, the Blue Jays reliever, once top 10 prospect in all of baseball, starting pitcher, could not stay healthy. And when he's been healthy, he hasn't been great. The lowercase x numbers are awesome. But Nate Pearson goes from Toronto to the Cubs for Yohendrick Pinango, who's experiencing a breakout right now. Double-A outfielder, was mashing in high A before a Double-A call-up. And Josh Rivera, who was a first-team All-SEC guy at Florida last year, has been really not good this year.
Yeah.
But 2 prospects for Pearson. I get that he has several years of control, but I was like, why did the Cubs just do that?
40 man. That's the only explanation, is just getting ahead of a 40-man crunch. Pinango, young guy, but signed so young and has repeated levels a couple times that yes, he's been really impressive, and I love him. Like, it's been fun to watch that ridiculous EVs translate this year. But I guess it was a guy that they knew, especially with the Cubs situation and how deep the farm is and their 40 man. Like, they knew that they weren't going to add him to the 40. So okay, let's catch him in now for a project arm that could maybe help us a little bit now. Clearly, the Cubs, they're going to give it the college try, I think, here. And we'll talk about the Paredes deal. Like, they're buying with control. So I guess he helps them give it that college try as just another arm. But Pearson, I think they've proven that in Chicago they can help develop these guys. And I think they've proven that in Toronto they can't. So it is a good candidate to get into a new environment. And it's not like Pearson's bounced around and he's just failed prospect that's bounced around. He's been in one spot, and he's been held hostage in that one spot that has really struggled to, 1, keep pitchers healthy, and 2, develop them. So I can talk myself into it from that lens. I've never been as high on Nate Pearson, even when, he was highly regarded. I don't think the fastball shape's great. It's gotten pummeled, and it is getting pummeled this year. Opponents are hitting 350 with an OPS over 1,000 against it. But he does have a really good slider. He still does sit 98 with fastball. So maybe they can do something, with him there. I think the big thing was, okay, we're going to face a 40-man crunch anyways. So let's cash in now. But it was surprising.
Yeah. Last Blue Jay one. There were a couple of Blue Jay ones before we get to the Rays fire sale. I don't know.
It's the Rays. It's the Rays. I don't even know what you call it because it's not a reshuffle. I'm trying to think of the word where you're just kind of, I don't know. You're just churning, man. They're just churning forward. Like it's the way they do it.
I saw Peter put a good tweet together. It was like he was going this person to this person. Like, did they somehow get better? It's like Eflin out, Springs in. Paredes
it's the rotation.
out,
It's the rotation, man. It's like they're gonna continue to rotate these players as they get more expensive, as they get closer to the ARB1, ARB2. They'll cash in and they'll just continue to recycle and recycle and recycle and recycle.
Before we get to the Rays clockwork, Yimi Garcia goes from Toronto to Seattle for Jonathan Clase, the outfield prospect, and Jacob Sharp, catching prospect who's been swinging it a little bit. Prospect might be a little stretchy for Jacob Sharp, but he's got I think like a 780 OPS in low A right now. He's 22 years old. He was a UNLV guy. Clase can like go get it. He swiped 70 bags last year and had 20 homers, granted in hitter-friendly environments. But, I mean, Seattle, I guess they needed more leverage arms, and they got a leverage arm.
I mean, when he's been healthy this year, Garcia's been pretty dominant, striking out 37% of batters. Not walking anybody, and keeping the ball in the yard, which is huge too. So opponents are hitting $159 against him. You love to see that, and I think it's a nice addition to that Mariners pen. And I think Clase was a guy that we kind of were expecting to go one way or another. Maybe we thought he'd be like the second or third piece in a larger deal, but I don't think you're going to let that stop you from adding a high leverage arm, which they needed, to add into the fold there. I do love the get for the Jays though, too, because he still is young, Clase. And we talked about it. The Jays don't have to fully rip it down and acquire low A prospects and start over. They have a core of fun position players at the big league level. And now
budget.
Yeah, and they have money because they got a major corporation behind them in their ownership group, right? Like this is a little bit different. Yeah. What I like is Clase can go up there now, see how he does. At the very least, I think you have a 4th/5th outfielder that fills a role for you, even when you're good and competitive. But you're hoping this could be a guy that ends up being an average regular in the outfield for you. He's a switch hitter. He's an elite runner. He's still just 22. He does have an ability and the propensity to elevate the ball consistently. I think his swing is, for that reason, is too uphill, and there's some adjustments that he can make, but he's 22. I think it's a great get for the Jays for a rental reliever.
And he's something mobile on a clunky team. It is the Kmart version of Jazz Chisholm going to the Yankees, but the Yankees have been clunky for years, and the Blue Jays are getting old, and they're clunky. And you get a guy that swiped, again, 70 bags last year, and it's something that is young and exciting on an older team. And that makes a rebuild a little bit easier to palate. And like, again, it's a lightning quick rebuild. It makes a retool slightly easier to palate. These 2 months are going to suck for Jays fans, I know. But like watching Clase might give him a little serotonin boost.
Yeah, like in Orelvis when he's back, it won't be this year, but like you can just see that core to your point. Like I still really like Addison Barger, Davis Schneider in the fold there. You still have Vladdy. We'll see what they do with Bichette, but like you still have Varsho, and you might not love all of these players, but they're all pieces, and like you can see what you got, and then they're gonna have spend, like you said, a lot of money coming off the books, and they can go sign free agents and do this kind of expedited retool here. And I think they're going about it in a good way here. I liked this move.
Unfortunately, no Tiedemann. Damn it.
Yep.
Damn it.
Unfortunately, that's it. Hopefully he can come back. He's young and they can just focus him into the pen and maybe that'll be the role that he fills. But unfortunately, yeah, the TJ, we had a feeling right after we heard that he's going to see get 3 opinions, right away, that it was probably not going to be good.
It was team doctor, then Keith Meister and Neil Elatrosh. It was like, okay, let's go get a second and let's schedule a third before we go to the second.
Yeah. gathering the Avengers to get the final decision, which I don't blame him, especially with all the frustration he's had. But hopefully this gets him right.
Yeah. All right, we're going to get to the Rays clockwork in a moment. Before that, quick break. Rays clockwork starts with Randy Arozarena. That was Thursday night at like midnight when Randy Arozarena went to the Seattle Mariners in exchange for Aiden Smith, Brody Hopkins, and a player to be named later. I think Twitter kind of sorted this one out for us, but the initial reaction was, "That's it?" These guys are pretty freaking good, man. Smith and Hopkins, and the player to be named later is coming from one of the better drafts this year in all of baseball, you have to assume. So, yeah, the Mariners get Randy, and that's an awesome injection of life in that outfield. And Randy and Julio in the same outfield is going to be stupid electric. I'm fired up for that. And Victor Robles, who's hitting like a sneaky 400 in a Mariners
He's
uniform.
here. He's arrived.
Finally, it's Jurickson Profar all over. We had Profar earlier this year. Now it's Victor Robles time. But we'll start with the Randy fit in Seattle. They needed bats. This was a hell of a bat to go by, quote unquote, low on.
And really, this is another one of those, like, if you want to, before you like fully assess a trade, it's not to bash any particular outlet. Just look at multiple. Like, look at multiple outlets and opinions, because and it's really hard. I can speak from experience. It is very difficult to update prospect rankings continuously through the season. Now, Major League Baseball should be able to, considering that they're Major League Baseball and they make a lot of money, and you think that they'd be able to, update these, employ enough people to update these rankings. It's not fair to what they expect from, the staff that they have, which they all do a great job, and have multiple legends in the industry. But like, I don't know why they don't have more people here to keep these prospect lists refreshed. I say that because Aiden Smith would be pumped up a lot higher had it been refreshed, and also Brody Hopkins would be as well. We broke down this trade in detail. Maybe we went as long as any on the call up. So check that out for, like, I talk about Hopkins release characteristics. Jack, I know, really enjoyed breaking down some of the video there and talking about some of the release similarities with some other arms. I mean, he fits the bill for both of these organizations that love unique characteristics. Hopkins could be a monster, but Smith, he's a plus glove in center field, can absolutely motor, and has been great this year. So it is a solid return. I don't want that to get confused. And the other thing is, Randy really quietly has turned back into Randy over the last few months. Last 45 games, 283, 397, 500 slash line.
Sure.
That's Randy. He's back. It was putrid in the beginning. He's back. He rides that hot streak into Seattle, and they need his offense in the worst way. And what I like about Randy is, in basketball, we talk about like that sixth man microwave type of player where he might not be a top 20 player in the game, but when he gets hot, he can score like a top 20 player in the game, like Lou Will or whoever you want to talk about in the NBA comparison. I don't really believe in that in baseball too much, but this is an instance where I can buy into it, because Randy Arozarena, when he gets hot, we've seen, and especially in high leverage, high stakes games, but in general, when Randy Arozarena gets hot, it's as ridiculous as anybody. Like, he's got that microwave to him. And the Mariners need somebody like that, because when he gets hot, he can carry their offense as much as a baseball player possibly can. And that is the exact reason why I think he was the perfect addition for them. And if they get to the postseason, a guy that has the experience, they don't have a lot of guys with significant, really, I don't know if they really have anybody with significant postseason experience on that roster. So that part of it is huge as well. I loved this trade for the Mariners. But I also thought, it was a classic Rays move where they're getting guys that were recently drafted. They don't have to add to the 40-man for a handful of years, which is a very important thing for them. And, I think also are on an upward trajectory.
So Randy Arozarena, I think, is making 8 this year. About 8. Yeah. No, Randy, pardon, he makes 2.8. No, he's getting 2.8 from Seattle. There we go. Spot Track sent me for a loop there. I knew he agreed to 8.1. The prorated amount that Seattle's going to pay him is $2,830,620. Those $20 are going to hurt, man.
Oof.
So he was making 8.1 this year in ARB 2. He's a Super 2 guy, so he has 2 more years of arbitration remaining. That was too expensive for Tampa. We should have known that the writing was on the wall, frankly, coming into this year, because this is what they do. When guys start to get expensive in ARB, they either extend them and backload the living shit out of the contracts and move them before they get really expensive, a la Glasnow this offseason, a la Eflin this deadline, and we'll get to Eflin in a moment. Or as they get to ARB 3 or they get to ARB 2, you move them before they make $10 million.
Yeah.
When was the last time they paid somebody like $20 million? I don't know off the dome.
Well, yeah, but they got really close to it, right? They offered Freddie Freeman a competitive deal, right?
And they
And
offered Aaron Judge a competitive
yeah,
deal.
that's my favorite thing. It's like I was talking about it. I think I tweeted it, but it's like raising the paddle at the auction, like being the first or second person on an item that you know is going to go for like $10,000, and they start at 550, and I raise my paddle so that I look like I feel like a big shot, and then I don't raise it the rest of the time.
My only pushback to that was the Freddie total money that they were willing to give him was very close, and the AAV was very close to what the Dodgers ended up giving him. And the Judge money was $300 million. Like that.
Reportedly, yes, yeah,
Reportedly, yeah. And like, hey, we can't confirm that 100%. But, you know, if they were like, hey, Judge, we'll give you 7 years for 200, it's like, all right, well, you're just not competing there and you're doing the auction thing. But the fact that they were kind of close on Freddie and Judge is like, you know what? Tip of the cap to you. Like you were willing to kind of sort of put your money where your mouth was on that, but you probably knew that you were getting beaten out.
yeah. I just with the way they operate, it doesn't make sense to me that they would make those sound like, especially with what we're seeing now. But maybe there's exceptions to their rule when you are, you know, Freddie Freeman, first ballot Hall of Famer, and Aaron Judge, who's, you know, his peak right now has been as dominant as any player we've really seen.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. So I it made too much sense to not move him, and I'm pissed that we didn't realize it in like April. You know what I mean? It took until June for us to be like, huh, are they going to trade Randy? But we
Yeah.
should have known. We should have known when they settled at 8.1.
Yeah, and I think once those guys get over 6 million, that they're already on their way out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Adam is the next one. Jason Adam goes to the Padres in one of the more combative trades that there was in the online baseball world here.
Hmm.
Jason Adam from Tampa to San Diego, 32-year-old, is under control for the next 2.5 years for Dylan Lesko, Homer Bush, the outfield prospect, and JD Gonzalez, a catcher. Lesko was the big one. The fact that there were two more prospects there, I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Lesko for Jason Adam. I tweeted, I hope Lesko haunts San Diego for the next decade. I hope he gives them nightmares.
Yeah.
That felt and some of the shit that I was reading, dude, like it felt disrespectful to Lesko. Like, are we gonna talk about the Tommy John surgery? Maybe, you know, like harpooning his, you know, command this year, but he's got crazy shit. I know Adam's been really good. I did not think Lesko was gonna be the price for Jason Adam.
No, and it's interesting too because you know I had a feeling Lesko could be on the move just because of the the command challenges that he has just continued to have since coming off of that TJ. And remember, this was a guy that as an amateur was lauded as one of the more polished arms that we had seen in years. You know, he's getting comps to a lot of the more polished arms that had been drafted out of high school. Fastball characteristics are fantastic, great carry. The changeup is a chance to be an elite pitch. I think it's a great get for the Rays because they are good at being able to kind of get these guys right. And if not, he moves to the bullpen, and worst case, he's going to be disgusting there. So I think that was crazy, but it was more shocking. I think that they even added on top. Homer Bush is a solid prospect. Bloodlines has really started to get it going this year. Can play a fantastic center field. Absolutely motors as well. Like that was surprising to see him go in the deal. Also, I think it's likely a fourth outfield type, but still high probability big leaguer there. And then Gonzalez is a player that they aggressively pushed and try to confuse you on the value of. But I know scouts do like him, and he does bring some intrigue both as an offensive catcher and some potential to stick at the position. But I mean, for a reliever, it was surprising to see this move. But we knew Preller was going to be very aggressive. I just felt like this exact package could probably get you a little bit more somewhere else. But I know if you look at Jason Adams' numbers over the last 3 years, he's been as consistent as any reliever in baseball.
Yeah, it's 3 straight years at a sub 3 right now. So
Yeah.
I know Peter brought up at the end of last week that he was texting with Javier Reyes, who's been doing some solid writing stuff on justbaseball.com. And he asked for a Padres wish list, and one of them was elite reliever. And they got something that's close to an elite reliever, I think. I,
Yeah,
I
I
think you
think
can put Adam in the conversation with Estevez and Tanner
I
Scott.
think he's elite. I think he's elite because it's been 3 straight years of it now, where maybe elite relievers are closer to the low twos
Yeah.
from what we're seeing at this point in baseball. But if you're below 3 for 3 straight years, I'll put you in the elite conversation. Also, 2 years of control with that. We just saw what the price was for AJ Puck, and I think some of that was maybe a slight overvalue of Davis and De Los Santos, but still, we saw the value of AJ Puck there. We're seeing the value of relievers with control, and yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was a good move for both sides because this does really help the Padres. If I'm gonna trade Dylan Lesko, I'm gonna want to get a little bit more. I'm sure they were hoping that he would pitch better. He has just not. Every time he has a good start, he seems to follow it with a bit of a shaky one. But I'm glad he's out of there because for his sake, he's 20 years old. I know he worked really hard through this offseason to try to get himself to the spot that he wanted to be in. Some things have gotten better. You are seeing some progress in some regards, but I think he needed to change the scenery there because the Padres are good at scouting, but sometimes on the development side, it's not as good, especially if pitchers start to flounder. We're seeing Snelling flounder as well. So, and they haven't real quite been able to get him right either. I think it's more of a Padres thing where they can't get their young guys totally right on the mound. And remember Gore, like we can go through a bunch of different situations as well. It seems like they struggle to get their guys right when they hit some adversity. And that's why I'm glad for Lesko's sake. I actually think it's better for his career. He's so talented. Get him out of there, and he's obviously in good hands now.
Let's play a game. 5 post-COVID. Lesko, Snelling, Gore, Patino, Ryan Weathers. There you go.
Look how
5.
much better Weathers got when he got out of there too. That was a guy that looked lost at a certain. He was traded for Garrett Cooper as a rental, and now for the Marlins, like before the injury, looks like he'd be a legit 4-starter for them for the foreseeable future at least.
I wonder if that's a fun place to be a prospect. I bet it's miserable
Hell
because
no,
like
it's
yeah, they have no like thoughts of me being a San Diego Padre. Like Preller's just gonna move me like the psycho he is.
I can one thing I can say is I've heard from prospects in that system that they do kind of live like assuming they're traded. Yeah, you're kind of assume like you're especially this time of year you're waiting. You're kind of on edge.
What a crappy spot to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's tough because I do like the aggressiveness. Like I do want to see MLB teams operate like NBA
I
teams.
appreciate it, but they're pushing it way too far.
Yeah, there's got to be some balance to that whole operation there. But yeah, I do think this was still huge for the Padres and much needed control in the relief area as well. So I mean, they're playing good ball, and this is a nice little jolt for them.
And they wanted a guy at a low price point. They got a guy at a low price point. So
Yep.
they are yeah, they got their
I
guy.
think that I'm glad you mentioned that. That's another reason why I think the cost was more is like look at Estevez's salary or even some of the more controllable arms. The way that the arbitration has worked out, like they're more expensive even with their control. You know that the Padres are totally strapped financially here, so they were willing to give up more prospect capital to be able to save themselves financially because I'm sure Preller has a hard cap from ownership at this point, and he's got to work within it. So having to work within that, it's even more important to have that cheaper arm there. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That definitely was part of the reason why he was so expensive. People again aren't really looking at the financial side too.
For sure. Okay, Zach Eflin, speaking of financials, goes from Tampa to Baltimore within division. The return for Eflin, who made 11 last year, is making 12 this year, and escalates to 18 next year. We knew he was getting moved. Was Mac Horvath, Jackson Bomeister, and Matthew Etzel. My understanding, so I think it was Eflin and Cash going from Tampa to Baltimore. So I think Tampa's covering a little bit of it. Maybe they're just covering the rest of this year and Baltimore's on the hook for the entirety next year. I'm not sure how that cash breakdown breaks out. I'm not sure if that's been reported on yet, but Horvath, Bomeister, Etzel. That's a pretty decent return. I really like Bomeister. You know I really like Bomeister. Horvath has, like he's got a well-rounded game. Etzel is a bag machine. Is he older for his level? I think he's in Double A right now. Yeah, for sure. Does he have a full beard at like 23 years old? Yeah, it's crazy. But Horvath was a well-rounded outfielder at Carolina that was one of their early round picks in 23. Bomeister was their second round pick last year. And he is like build a right-hander in the lab, that's what Jackson Bomeister looks like. The Orioles gave up some solid prospects, but again, they just don't fucking feel it. They don't feel it. How do they do this? God.
Horvath is, most likely a utility guy. And yeah, he's toolsy. It's fun. He can play all over the diamond, but I don't think they're sweating that much. And here's the raising in, accumulating 23 draftees or recent draftees that they don't have to add to the 40 for a while. Bomeister's fun. And it's another guy that the command is a little bit of the question. And if that comes along, then you got a really good piece here. But again, another guy that has the fallback of being a good reliever because the fastball characteristics are fantastic and then he can really spin it. So that's the thing with the Rays too, is I think people, when you look at the prospect rankings and things like that, like, oh, well, he's not ranked that high. He's an arm with reliever risk. They're identifying arms that have the fallback plan of really being a solid reliever, like a high leverage, really good arm, not this Matthew Liberatore reliever thing that we're seeing right now. It's not that kind of reliever. So I think that's an important point. And there's another guy that would thrive in high leverage if he ends up, going that route. But I think for the Orioles, this was a nice low cost addition, and I'm glad to see them leveraging a little bit more financial wiggle room now with new ownership that's willing to spend more and saying, hey, we know that this is an undesirable deal, considering that the fact that he's going to be owed $18 million next year. And I believe the Rays may have, I don't know how much the Rays ended up covering of this one. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
I know for sure they covered the trade assignment bonus, which was $1 million, but I don't know beyond that and how that all breaks down.
Can you define the trade assignment bonus?
So they'll put stipulations in the deal to try, of course, you're never going to get a no trade clause if you're Zach Eflin. So to try to disincentivize a trade to stay in one spot, you get kicked $1 million if they trade you.
Huh.
So I see there's a lot of them, actually. It's become kind of common, especially for these teams that, love to swap guys quite frequently and early after signing them. But I believe it's $3.8 million according to Spot Track that they're covering for the rest of the year, that the Orioles have to pay for the rest of this season, and then $18 million next year. The $18 million next year made him, not nearly as valuable. It's still valuable, but not nearly as valuable. So I think it was a pretty fair, normal swap, but I like it for the Orioles. I'd love to see them get a higher impact arm. Of course, we'd love to see them go cash in and go crazy on a big time arm. But when Eflin is right, and I don't know if he's been 100% healthy this year. Like I don't know if he's dealing with a little bit of something. The velo has fluctuated. He hasn't been spinning it quite as well as he normally does. But when he is feeling right, we've seen this guy look like a top 20 pitcher in baseball through stretches.
In Cy Young voting last year.
So maybe even if it doesn't totally happen this year and he's that high threes, low fours guy for them, that's still great. They need that right now in the rotation. But beyond that, if he gets right health-wise and comes back and feels 100% next year, he could be one of the stronger threes in baseball.
Absolutely.
So I love the move for the O's.
And I will say his presence with no Bradish next year is humongous. Like, that's the forgotten thing about Bradish. I think it's like, oh, sucks that Bradish won't be there for the World Series run this year. He ain't there maybe for the World Series run next year. Like, that's tough. And UCL sprain in spring training, try the rest and recovery thing, and then you come back and you tear it. Like, darn. That's a really brutal blow. Timing-wise, it couldn't have been worse for Baltimore.
And look great.
They hedged it. Yeah, he looked awesome.
Yeah, that was the worst part. Is like he's back, he's throwing well. We're like, oh, okay, he's back from the sprain, and then even after he threw well, it was like, oh, he's hurt again, and that's the part that stinks. But that's a great point too. Like you have that trade alone. Like I think what they gave up would almost be worth it for rental Eflin if he's throwing a little bit better. And now you don't blink, especially with the situation with Bradish, to sign a guy like Zach Eflin to a 1 year, $18 million deal and free agency. So if you look at it through that lens, to me, it's a no-brainer. And I thought that was a great value add for a team that generally doesn't leverage having a financial edge on the team that they're trading with. Here they do. And that was nice to see. If Eflin can be the guy that we saw last year, that this could be something that puts him over the top.
So you want to talk Isaac Paredes. I'm going to be mean for a minute here. I cannot wait for him to shut the spray chart people up. Can't wait. And I'll eat shit if he doesn't. If he leads Major League Baseball in warning track flyouts next year, I would like punch me in the face again. Like I'll do the punch me in the face thing. I'll do whatever. This guy, like we've talked about it time and time again. I think he has innate feel. You think he has innate feel. I get that they're short homers. I don't care. He's an all-star. He was a 4-win player last year. He's 25 years old with several years of control. This is one of the better third basemen in all of Major League Baseball. And the Cubs got a guy when they think they're going to be good. They didn't think that they were going to win the World Series this year. They did going into the year, but now like they've admitted that they're not going to do it this year. So what do? You go get a 25-year-old all-star third baseman that's coming off of a 30-homer season that is tracking again for a 3.5, 4-win season. And you give up like a bit, yeah, and we'll talk about the arms that are going back, but they were dangling Morel like a carrot all offseason. And they figured out a way to sell Tampa on Jose Siri 2.0, and you get a 25-year-old all-star back.
Yeah. Yeah. Jose Siri without the glove. Like that's why I know that the Rays have been enamored by Morel for a little bit, like the guy that they had wanted to add. So what's interesting is I can't wait to see how they deploy him. I don't think it's going to be third, obviously. No. So or do they try him in center? Like, what are they? Do they like get him right? Because they know he's played out there and it hasn't been great. Like, what do they see? Because clearly they see something. But let's just focus on the Paredes thing for now. I am so happy the Cubs did this. I thought we were going to see the Cubs tear it down, and they're still going to probably trade some pieces, and it's going to be this retool. But at the same time, like I thought they were just going to subtract some pieces. And then if they add, it'll be through free agency or in the offseason via trade or whatever it may be. The Cubs aren't totally out of it just yet. So it's fun that now, they're adding a guy that could spark them a little bit and get them back into the conversation this year as they're 5 games, under 500, but there's still so much baseball to be played and you never know. But I love that they're also just giving their fans a little reminder that, hey, it's a bit different now. Don't worry. I know this year's been disappointing, but we're not just going to tear it down and start over. We are in it. We want to be good. We're in it for the long haul here. Like this is a team that even though it's been disappointing this year, we're focused on being competitive for the next several years. They're only 5 games out of a playoff spot right now. And the teams ahead of them are the Giants, the Pirates, the Cardinals, the Diamondbacks, and the Mets, which reasonably all of them could falter pretty significantly. So that side of it is okay. They still got a shot.
Real quick, give me a team by team again, and I'm going to tell you what they've done at the deadline here.
Mets.
Nothing at this point.
Winker.
Okay. Yeah.
Diamondbacks.
Nothing at this point.
AJ Puck.
Oh, God. I'm 0 for 2.
St. Louis Cardinals.
Actually, nothing at this point.
Yes, you got it this time.
Good.
Pittsburgh Pirates.
Nothing. I know that.
Yeah. San Francisco Giants.
Nothing.
And then the Cubs. Like, it could be a way to close some ground. And they play the Reds for a 3-game set. And they could get themselves right back in this thing. The EV stuff, like, spare me, please. Please. How long does somebody have to do something before we just stop? Like, and I know you say, oh, you only had 16 home runs this year, you had 31 last year. Slugging's down across the entire league because these balls, especially in the first half of the year, were a joke. Objectively.
If I have to see expected home runs again, so help me.
I'm gonna freak out. Especially because like the wind goes out, sometimes it goes in, others. But also, this guy runs great contact rates, and I think he can still adjust a little bit when he needs to. But like, it was a 137 WRC plus last year. It's a 130 this year. This guy has hit, well, what do we got now? 67 home runs over the last 3 seasons, but he hasn't even played a full 3 seasons then, right? It's 111 games, 143, and then 100 games. So even if he's 20 to 25 home runs, he's still comfortably the best, most productive hitter in that lineup. Like, what were we just talking about with the Chicago Cubs? Who is their best hitter that I trust the most? Probably Seiya Suzuki with what he's doing right now, and maybe he's a little bit more powerful. But like, Isaac Paredes is comfortably their most consistent and well-rounded player immediately. Done.
Got it.
Comfortably. And they gave up a guy that has been a disappointment for them this year, and then a high leverage relief arm, which they could definitely use.
For sure.
And I think there's a solid value on him. Like I think teams are already very much valuing him, who we'll get to. And then an intriguing pitching prospect who's kind of broken out this year. So like, I mean, I think this was one of the best moves made so far, if not the best move made so far. I think Arozarena was up there, but I think they gave up a little bit more in terms of the upside and the trajectory of those prospects. Whereas in this case, like, I don't know. I think it's really hard to criticize the move that was made here by the Cubs. I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
It really made them better, both short-term, long-term, and gave them something that they desperately needed, which was a clear-cut, consistent hitter who could actually play solid defense at third base too. They have been a gaping hole there.
We talk about Tampa, like maybe saying like, oh, it's, Tampa's not necessarily they know something we don't all the time when it comes to trades. I think with Ty Johnson, they know something that we don't. Like he's a guy that I actually saw because he was at Ball State last year. Indy kid, went to Ball State for 3 years. I questioned his ability to throw strikes consistently enough. And so far this year, he's done it at a way better level. And the K numbers are really good in the Cubs system. I will say there are very few pitchers, starters or relievers, that I'm blown away by in an inning. And earlier this year, I was blown away by Hunter Biggie, who is the return. And I said to you, I think he's got like very good I think he's setup gross. I don't know if he's closer gross, because I was just blown away by the fastball, like not necessarily the curveball, but the fastball was 100 and a laser beam. He's got such a strong lower half. It stays on plane perfectly. It's a borderline like perfect fastball for me,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, it's a slightly below average release height with above average carry and a short arm delivery, but still somehow gets average extension slightly above that, and it's 100. And this guy gained. If you're wondering why you never heard of him and now he's good, and oh, they're just saying this kid got traded to the Rays. No, go look at the numbers. Go look at what he did for the Cubs, even in the very brief stint he had up there. He gained 3 in 3 miles per hour on his fastball. He worked his butt off.
And yeah, I mean, like, dude, his legs are like big man. By the way, Harvard man, so shout out him. But I mean, go look at the numbers, but also go watch a full sequence against a hitter from his time in the big leagues. Like, just go watch a half inning that he threw.
Dismantled motherfuckers. I'm telling you,
it's insane what he was doing.
So this is the reason why, like, when people are going to say, oh, well, why isn't it 3 top 100 guys or whatever? For the Rays, they feel as though getting a guy like this can turn into more value for them because they're going to churn him. So for the next few years, he's going to be a really solid high leverage arm for them, whether it's elite closer or, which is probably a little far-fetched, or just really solid. We're talking about Jason Adam. If he's Jason Adam, they're going to have a Jason Adam for several WAR, and then they're going to trade him around the same time they traded Jason Adam for a return that people are going to say, whoa, that's a lot for a reliever. We're going to do this whole thing over again. But Biggie is exactly that template. Sometimes we can't see it that clearly because it's like a Ryan Johnson where he's far off and it's going to take some time. I love that they made this Biggie trade because now you're going to see it in real time. He's going to go straight into their bullpen, straight into high leverage. This was a guy that after the trade, just being able to watch now more of it, the fastball, like you mentioned, crazy. But now that cutter ticking up to 90, disgusting. Then he's got this banger curveball as well, or slider, as well. Like, and he even mixes in a curveball, but that fastball, as you said, like that's a clear cut 70 grade, borderline, like high end 70. It's going to play in the 7th, the 8th. It could even be, that closer type there, but he's a high leverage arm, and the Rays are going to get a lot of value out of him if he stays healthy and can flip him. And then Jansen, great fastball characteristics as well. So fits the bill and has ticked up a little bit too. But, for those who may be like surprised by that, again, it's going to fit their mold. Morel is the one that I'm really interested to see because clearly they value him more than I do. And I don't want to speak for you, but probably you do.
No, I mean, dude, like I was calling Siri an MVP candidate as a full joke when he was in Houston because he was really fast and he could hit the crap out of the ball. Problem was he never made contact. And like you saw, platinum glove defender. They turned Jose Siri from excess and like no spot on the Astros into a good center fielder in Major League Baseball. Now, the difference between Siri and Morel, again, is the defense. And my thing is like, okay, you know what? Like they can ride the waves of Morel and his highs are going to look awesome in a Rays uniform. I have so many defensive questions. So yeah, like they value him much more than I did, for sure.
Yeah, maybe he plays right, like in this. Just
And he's got one of the strongest arms in baseball.
yeah,
We just have no idea where the throw's going, but like
no,
it goes somewhere quick. So cool.
yeah. So we'll see what they do there, and he can run, right? So like maybe there's something they see, but it's been a disappointing year for him. In 93 WRC plus in a buck 99, but he did hit 26 home runs last year, and he does have a 107 career WRC plus in 322 big league games. And you could say that there's some things that you could adjust swing wise that could still unlock more, and he's still in pre-arbitration, so he's not going to be a free agent until 2029. So you're getting a big league regular right away, guaranteed, with that much control. So I mean that's obviously the big part of it. He just turned 25 too, so still very young. If they can find a way to get him defensively valuable at all, that would change things a lot. But they also got to help get him right offensively too. It's been a very frustrating year.
All right, so light off the top. You probably read the episode description when you clicked on this, and you know that we're not doing the NL Central trade deadline preview. We've already kept you an hour and 10 minutes. So we hope you have, your appetite quelled when it comes to trade conversations. And Peter and Aram are going to handle NL Central and NL East on the same episode. Like we're running out of like guesstimations because guys are moving. And again, like tying it back to the very, very beginning, this has been such a refreshing deadline because it's not just like, oh, damn, 5 moves came in at the buzzer. This started 5 days before the deadline, and I love this. Love
Yes.
it.
Yes. I hope this is a sign of things to come. And I know that there's certain teams that were worried about where the market would be, especially for relief help, and wanted to set the market. And it used to be, I'm afraid to set the market because I don't want to overpay. I think now teams feel very confident with their internal teams and analytics teams and research, and feel like, okay, if our team feels this way, if we think it's an overpay, we think it's an overpay. Or if people think it's an overpay, they think it's an overpay. If we think it's a good deal, we think it's a good deal. Instead of, oh, let's see what other people do, and then we'll act accordingly. Because then you miss out on opportunities, and you end up suffering from other people's mistakes. Like imagine making a trade after the Angels last year and being like, wow, that's what they just gave up for Giolito. Like now teams are going to be asking for that from us. So I think there is a little bit more of an urge to set the market yourself and just deal with the optics, because so many teams now are doing this recycling thing that we're talking about, and just wearing the optics and just saying, you'll see, we'll be good. So I think optics are becoming less and less important to teams. And I think that is a good thing for expediting the deadline here. And I think that's a great thing in general. So we're not doing these all at the 11th and a half hour. And it makes it a lot more fun because we still got a lot of shoes to drop, and we've already had plenty happening already.
And more than we were expecting to drop. And I'm sure there's going to be some unexpected in the next 34 hours and change. So I am so excited for what, these last day and a half, 2 days have in store for us in the deadline. Every link you need is in the episode description, including the link to join us on our 5 games in 5 days road trip. Really cool that Wrigley is sold out on Thursday against the
Thank
Cardinals.
you.
That is super cool. Thank you guys so much. But still tickets available tonight in Milwaukee if you're looking for a last minute buy. Hey, you're in the Milwaukee area. You want to come hang out with us for Braves Brewers. We also have St. Louis on Tuesday, Cincinnati on Wednesday, including a live podcast recording at the MGM Sportsbook at Great American Ballpark at 5 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. Cubs Cardinals on Thursday. And then on Friday, that is D-backs Pirates at PNC. Are you going to get the Renegade dog too, or is that just Peter? It's the hot dog with pierogies named after David Bednar.
Wait, with pierogies?
Yeah. You ever had a pierogi?
No.
It's a Polish dumpling, potato filled, grilled onions on it, so you're out. Sorry.
I'm
I
out.
shouldn't have asked.
Out.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to get a hamburger with nothing on it.
Nah, not
Maybe
doing that
lettuce?
either.
You want
No.
lettuce?
Nah, no.
What you gonna get? Some chicken fingies?
Send me some tendies.
Some
Yeah.
tendies? I don't think
Yeah.
they have milk at PNC Park, but we'll see.
Ew. You know, come on. You know I don't drink milk. You know that's one of my biggest stances.
Oh yeah, almond.
Not for humans.
Not for humans. Yeah. No, you're an almond guy, right? Not an oat guy.
Yes. Yeah. I'm
a Califia almond guy. Sponsor us. All right, guys.
I
We'll
wish.
talk to you tomorrow.